Welcome to Let's Talk About It. A podcast gives a platform for real talk, real people, real topics, real conversations. Please subscribe, like, comment, enjoy this journey, and enjoy this ride. Welcome to this week's episode. Welcome everybody to Let's Talk About It, a podcast that gives a platform for real talk, real people, real topics, real conversations. First and foremost, I would like to thank the over 6,000 new subscribers I have. I am so blessed. I am so grateful about that. To you guys join me on this ride to this raw and unscripted podcast. It's a totally different platform, totally different podcast. We having conversations. That's all we're having. Conversations about issues, topics, etc. Thank you so much. Please like, subscribe, give a comment to every podcast. The more likes and comments we get, the bigger it gets. Thank you so much. Before I introduce my guests, we're going to talk about mental health today. I'm going to read some of these stats right here, right? That me and my guests talked about before. 57.8 million adults live with some sort of mental illness. That's 57.8 million across the United States. Imagine that. 77% of men have suffered with symptoms of common mental health conditions such as anxiety, stress, and depression. Trust me, I've dealt with them as well. Today, we're going to learn about a life coach. I don't know that much about it. Some people do, some people don't. We also going to learn more about CBT practitioner. Very interesting conversation. Number one, mental health. I'd like to introduce my guest today. He is a big time Instagram influencer. He's been on many podcasts, many Instagram lives. Now we gonna get his name right. It's Joe Legolvan.
Yeah, it's pretty damn close. Good job, brother.
I'm pretty close. I'm
Yeah.
all right. I'm not too bad.
No, everybody messes it up, but that's my life, man. Yeah, that was pretty darn close. So,
Bro, let me tell you something. Almost every podcast I have always butchers somebody's last name. I don't know what the fuck's going on, but I'm trying to do my best with it.
That's what and that's what's good about this podcast is it just you're having real conversations, and I feel like we live in such a society of politeness. You go to like the store and the people are like, "Yes, sir. Yes, ma'am," and then it's like that. There's no substance there. It's like just talk to me like a real human being. Let's have a real conversation. Get into the real nitty gritty. And people are craving that more than ever. It's just people who can actually speak on a realistic reality level, where you can just talk and express yourself, like a real human being, not a freaking robot. It's so crazy.
Well, guess what, Joe? We about to get real today.
Absolutely. Let's do it. Let's dive in, man.
Listen, you have you and I have had little discussions before.
Mm-hmm.
Let's get into your journey first.
Yeah.
Like I said before, whatever you feel comfortable about, because I know you had a journey to get you to be a life coach now.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So
yeah,
let's talk about that first.
No, absolutely. Well, one of the biggest life-changing moments of my life, I would say, is when my sister took her life, and that was about 10 years ago, which, that was due to mental health issues. And then growing up, I had a ton of friends, just like probably most people can relate on this podcast, that have struggled with that same thing. And then in my own personal life, my own personal walk, I've had issues as well, And so it was kind of one of those things where I was like, man, there's a lot of people struggling out there. And so what can I do to actually, bridge that gap? Because obviously we're spending a lot of money on mental health. Westernized medicine is doing a lot of things, and I'm not anti that or anything, but there seems to be a gap that is not getting closed with most people. And a lot of people are really struggling. And so that's where I look at Instagram, social media, these type of platforms this is where we can maybe help bridge the gap. We have the internet, we have all these amazing tools at our hands. And I think it requires people like us to take up those tools and see what we can do to benefit mankind right now and to connect with other people with these issues and let them know they're not alone,
Joe, I'll tell you right now, man, you just said a whole mouthful was 100% true. Mental health is such a big deal, man.
Mm-hmm.
And trust me, I go through it now. You're younger than me. But people my age, your age, even the youngest age, man. Like I'm
Oh yeah.
hearing teenagers are going through it.
Yeah.
Like I heard stories somebody at 7, 8 years old is going through it.
Oh yeah.
I mean, the mental health is a big issue today.
Yeah.
But one question I had to ask you first and foremost, what is a life coach?
So, that term obviously just is all over the place now. And I'm almost 40 now, and there's always that joke like I want the confidence of a 20-year-old life coach, right? Like
Yeah. Yeah.
because it's like, you have very little problems, you're crushing life, you can eat whatever you want, stay in shape, and it's like so but I think what's good about that is it really opens up the door for people to help other people. The coaching paradigm is so cool. And one of the aspects I use in it is the cognitive behavioral therapy, so CBT therapy. And I'm using that in a platform of life coaching, so I can talk to people online through the internet and kind of help them in any way possible. And cognitive behavioral therapy, to kind of summarize in an easily digestible way, just means that our cognitions or our thoughts create our emotional states. And so what we need to do with people is figure out where these thoughts are coming from, and what belief systems are creating these thoughts. Because a lot of times, if people are having negative thoughts about themselves, a situation, sometimes it's due to a belief system that they don't even realize they have. Like
Mm.
it's subconscious. Maybe they were taught it when they were a kid, or they were taught it by their parents, or something like that, and it doesn't serve them anymore. And so we actually go back and kind of restructure the subconscious mind, if you will, which again, subconscious mind, that's a big term. And sometimes that sounds airy fairy or kind of out there. But all that means is that's the part of the mind that we don't see, right? Like, so the conscious part of our mind is what we're aware of right now, right? We're aware of this podcast, we're aware of us talking, you may be aware of things in the room right now, but subconscious is all the things that are hidden behind it. And we need the subconscious mind to function in life, right? Like, imagine if every time I opened up a door, I go, oh, I've got to grab the handle and I've got to turn it to the right. And now I've got to push the door. All that stuff is subconscious, right? It's all behind us. And that's how we function in life, because we don't need to consciously think about these things, because usually we're thinking about something else while we're opening the door, right?
Yeah.
So the subconscious mind, a lot of times our belief systems, whether it has to do with relationships, whether it has to do with our fitness level, whether it has to do with what we believe life is about and our purpose here, a lot of those belief systems we don't even realize that we have. And so when you go back and you kind of reprogram that part, you'll realize that you start having different activities in life, you start thinking a different way. And if you start thinking a different way, then you start feeling a different way about life. And that's essentially what cognitive behavioral therapy does. And so we go into that forum, and I actually just ask people a ton of questions and see where they're at, to see how we can improve their mental health, how we can improve their physical health, all in one. And so, to get back to your original question, that's the form of life coaching that I prescribe to.
So what was that moment when you said, "All right, I'm getting into this"? Like, what was
Mhm.
that exact moment?
I think for me personally, it's from my own suffering, right? Like a lot of times, we we don't realize something's a problem until we ourselves are suffering with it, right? Like,
Mhm.
and that's and so for me, I know growing up, my biggest thing in life was going through breakups. That was like that always would wreck me, and that, yeah. And we were of course chatting about that, a little bit before. It's like
Mhm.
relationships are so tough, man, and they just hit you on a different level. And I've talked to a lot of guys who are struggling with this right now, and girls too. And we're kind of in an age, it's very weird, where women don't trust men and men don't trust women, right?
Yeah.
Like, if I go onto some man podcast, they're going to talk about how women are all just solipsistic, they're all just out for themselves, they all just want the richest, fittest guy, and blah blah. And then you go onto a female podcast, and they'll be like saying the same thing about guys. So it's such a weird time we're in, where everybody's in these echo chambers of kind of tribalism, if you will. So relationships are not getting easier for people right now. And with that said, I think that was one of the things for me personally, that I knew I was suffering so bad and having so much issues with that, that I'm like, man, I need to figure out ways that I can improve my mental health while I go through these struggles in relationships.
Well, let me ask you something, right? Speaking about that, do
Mhm.
you think, in your opinion today, that social media has like added to all this drama between men and women?
I think honestly the internet has added to a lot of drama just in general. And we see it in the political world as well, right? Because imagine like 100 years ago, we were all living in some farm area, whatever. We all
Yeah.
got the same news. We would just all read the same newspaper.
Mhm.
Maybe we had one library where we could get our information from.
Yeah.
So our ideas were very kind of cohesive. Most people they would have different ideas from each other, maybe slightly different spiritual beliefs or whatever, but they were somewhat cohesive and we could relate to each other. Now that we've got the internet, we've got so much information at our fingertips, and information is a good thing, but it could be a bad thing when people get in these hardcore echo chambers of quote knowledge where they are just absorbing one point of view so deeply that they can't see anybody else's point of view. And in this world, like whenever I post like what are you struggling with, I'll do that on my Instagram a lot. There's a lot of lonely people out there, and it's so crazy and so brutal. And of course mental health, a big part of that is having somebody that you can talk to, somebody that you can relate to, somebody that you can connect with.
Mhm.
And it is very difficult to connect on opinions, especially nowadays, right? Like
Yeah.
if me and you were going to try to talk about politics or try to talk about religion or something like that, we're going to have way different ideas, and for us to truly connect on something, it may be somewhat difficult. But connecting on emotions are ubiquitous. Emotions are like, we both know what heartbreak feels like. We
Yeah.
both know what loss feels like. We both know what disappointment feels like. And so that's really what I try to do is, yeah. Everybody's got their opinions. That's fine. Keep your opinions. I don't care. But let's connect on something about being human, right? Like,
Yeah.
no matter if you're, hardcore right, you're hardcore left, whatever, like, we're both human beings. We're both going to die. We're both going to lose people we love. We're both going through this crazy struggle we call life. And let's connect on that,
Yeah.
and you will realize that your mental health improves a lot when you really start connecting with people.
Bro, I'll tell you, there's some people on here that's going to watch this and they're going to ask and they're going to say this question. I guarantee it because people do it all the time.
Mhm.
They're going to ask, what is the difference between a life coach and a psychiatrist?
Yeah, that's a huge, I mean, obviously it's a big difference, right? Like a psychiatrist, I've got a lot of respect for because they go to school for a long period of time. They study all the theories about the brain and mind science and stuff like that. Now, life coach, pretty much anybody can do that. Like, there's not a lot of that, but what I like about the life coach world is we are results driven. We are not education driven necessarily, because you could have the highest education as a psychiatrist and get terrible results. But if you're a life coach and you're getting terrible results, guess what? You're not going to get a lot of clients because a lot of it comes through referrals. So
Yeah.
when people meet with me and they feel better and they live better and their lives improve, that is like a testimony to what I'm doing. And then other people are like, man, I need to go see this guy because he helped you out. So I'm going to go, make sure and see maybe he's able to help me out in the same way. So, anybody can come out and say they're a life coach, but ultimately, if you want business, it's got to come through results. It's got to come through people actually getting better. And one of the things I do like about the coaching world as opposed to purely the psychological world is a lot of times the psychological world is really focused on dealing with our past, right? It's very Freudian in the sense of like, okay, well, how were you born? What were your parents like? What was that relationship like? Different things like that, which all of that is important. But if you simply just stay in the past your whole life, you're not really moving forward. You're just reliving traumas. And they've done a lot of studies where people, if they just sit there and ruminate about their traumas all day long, they actually end up getting worse. They do
Yep.
not end up getting better. And
Yes.
so sometimes what I like about the coaching world, it's like, yes, we have these traumas. Yes, we have this past, but where are we going in the future? What are we creating for ourselves? Yes, you went through this terrible thing. Yes, you maybe had a terrible family or a terrible breakup or something like that. But where are you going to be at in the next 5 years? And I think that's so important for people to realize because life keeps going. Life
Mhm.
keeps going regardless.
Yes.
And part of life is moving with baggage. It's not like being completely healed and just, and figuring out your entire past and now you move through life blissfully.
Mhm.
Part of life is moving with the baggage, moving with the trauma, moving with the issues. And that's one of the things I like to help people do. It's like, yes, you've had this negative thing happen in your life, but where are we going to bring that to? Where are we going to go to? And when you start thinking about the future, that's when you really start growing in a big way.
Bro, I'm gonna say something right now. Negativity and people living on the past. I don't mean to make a joke out of this, man, but go on TikTok. There's a whole bunch of them out there on
Oh yeah.
that. They
Oh
just
yeah.
live on the past, want to complain about everything, but I'm not gonna
Yeah.
go there.
Yeah.
You said you have clients
Hmm.
right now. When you get a new client in, like, what are some of the questions, right, you ask your new client to come in?
I think the biggest thing is just listen to them talk, and you will find out where their mental state is at. And just being kind of reading between the lines, because most people, if you ask them stories about themselves, they will start explaining why they are the way they are. And it's very important for these people to start looking at not the external factors that are affecting them, but looking at where they may play a part in that situation, right? Because external things do happen to us, right? Like things that are negative, things that are hurtful or whatever, but that's not an empowering place to be. You
Mm.
know, you may have gotten hit by a drunk driver, we'll say, and lost both your legs. That was not your fault, right?
Yeah,
But where that's to sit there and just focus on this drunk driver for the next 10 years and what how he messed up your life, that's not an empowering place to be. The empowering place to be is to say, yes, this happened, it sucked, it's terrible, but where can I go from here? And that is an empowering question because it brings the focus back to yourself.
yeah,
So a lot of times, yeah, when I'm talking to people, I will find out where their mental state is at. And if they are taking blame, that's the first step, right? That's the first step in anything. If they're starting to say, man, I'm doing this wrong or I'm doing that wrong, then at least they know that like they have power over the situation. Now, if they're just simply listing all the different people that hurt them, it's like, okay, well, we got a whole nother step to go to, which is bringing it back to yourself. Now,
mm,
bringing it back to yourself is not the end game because sitting there blaming yourself for all your life's problems, that's not very helpful either.
no.
Because that's just going to bring a lot of guilt, a lot of sadness on yourself, and sometimes depression. But it's looking at those things, forgiving yourself for them, right? Because a lot of times we don't have self-awareness about ourselves because we have so much guilt. Like the guilt will hide self-awareness, and
Mm.
we don't want to look at ourselves because guess what? We make mistakes. I make mistakes. This is part of life. But if you can look at yourself with some sort of compassion, some sort of grace, then you can take better steps to make better decisions for yourself in the future.
Joe, with your clients, right? Now, I don't know if you have a huge client, like a huge clientele,
Mm-hmm.
but I'm kind of curious. You talk to people about their issues and problems. Like, how much time do you give them, and like, how do you separate, like, your own personal time and getting back with them and giving them time? I mean, that's a lot of time to put into that, right?
It is for sure. And there's definitely, that's, I think, something I'm learning in this process of doing it is having those boundaries set. And for an example, I was on a client call. This was a few months ago, and he's a young guy, real smart, real with it and stuff. And he spent the first 20 minutes of that call talking about his boss and how his boss was an a-hole.
Yeah.
And I just sat and listened. And at the end, like after 20 minutes, I was like, okay, let's stop for a second. And I was like, I want you to say something with me. And he's like, okay. And I was like, everything is your fault. I don't care if it's raining outside. I don't care what this is. And he's like, what? And of course that was very like intense for him.
Yeah.
And I'm like, well, here's the deal. Like, it's not your fault that your boss is an asshole, or it's not your fault this or not your fault that. But let's look at it like everything's your fault. Because if you look at it from that perspective, then you'll start making decisions to change your life. And he's like, oh, I get it. And then we started talking about, okay, well, what are some ways you can get a new job? And he's a young guy. Like he's got tons of opportunity,
Yeah.
tons of
Yeah.
possibilities. And you will meet people that'll stay in a job that they hate with a boss that they hate for 30 years. And if they always stay in that state of, oh, this boss did this to me, this is so, messed up, they can stay like that for 30 years. But at his age and where he's at, I'm like, dude, why don't you take the blame for this and say, this job, this situation I'm in is because I've chosen it. Like, yes, I have to pay rent. Yes, I have to pay bills, but there are other options. I can go to school. I can figure out a new career path. I can do different things. And so then we started talking on the solution. And talking about problems is very draining. That'll really drain your energy and stuff. But talking about solutions is empowering and it gives you a ton of energy. And so for me, like, I don't mind talking to a lot of people throughout my day and spending a lot of energy on them as long as it's solution oriented. If it's problem oriented, oh my God, I'm gonna, my head's gonna explode. So like I've gotten really good at making sure we can, because there's nothing wrong with hearing people out about their problems and letting them vent and those type of things, but there has to be a line that you draw, or else you're just gonna get, you know, um, tons of trauma just poured onto you, and you'll live that through them, and that's not a good place for anybody to be.
Joe, do you have a certain time limit? Do you have hours, certain
Mhm.
days? Do you take days off? Do you tell people, okay, I'm available from this time, or are you available 24 hours? Or I mean, how's it work for you?
Yeah, for me, I'll just set up calls with people. We'll do like a 30-minute call once a week, those type of things. So I set it up around my schedule. The biggest thing I know for me though is this forces me into self-care mode, because if I'm not taking care of myself physically, mentally, and emotionally, I'm not going to be there for my clients. And so a lot of it has to do with how well I'm taking care of myself on my own life. And so if I'm not taking that time to, self care myself and really make sure I'm in a good place mentally and emotionally, I'm not going to be there for my clients. So it's one of those jobs, like I can't like show up hungover to to do life coaching, right? Like
I'll never be good, Joe.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure I could. I'd probably be terrible at it though. So it really forces me to make sure I'm in a good space mentally, which is also like the good part about it is I'm not coming from a space of like, oh, I'm a guru, I figured it all out, I'm enlightened, whatever. Like I'm coming from a space of I'm still learning this thing too. I'm still struggling with my own things too. But what I've noticed is as I'm giving people advice, I end up giving myself advice at the same time. And it's so funny because doing this type of work, I've never been happier in my life. And a lot of it is happiness is not determined by our external circumstances. Happiness is determined by our psychology, by the way we are thinking about things, right? And we can use that as an example for anything. Like if we think external circumstances will make you happy, then Elvis would have been the happiest guy who ever lived, right? Michael Jackson would have been the happiest guy who ever lived, or Whitney Houston. They had tons of adoration, tons of money, tons of success, tons of fame,
Sorry.
and none of those things made them happy. Why? Because their psychology was off. So if I'm reprogramming my psychology all day long by talking to people about these concepts and ideas, I'm going to make myself a very happy person. And when you're happy, you have more energy and you have more light to give to other people.
Joe, dang, I got a tickle in my throat here.
You're
Damn,
good,
what's going
brother.
on?
You're good.
Sorry, I'm probably about to edit that
You're
out.
good. You're good.
um, who was your life coach?
So I've had multiple throughout the years. One, of course, Tony Robbins and all those guys. Like I've been to some of his retreats and different things like that. And a lot of impersonal ones, the ones that are just on YouTube, on the internet. But I've had a lot of them growing up. I had a lot of spiritual mentors when I was really young. I was really deep into like monkhood, if you will. I was really into kind of Eastern philosophy, and I had a lot of yogic teachers, for lack of a better word, people that
Okay.
devoted their life to that, and that really helped me kind of get my brain aligned, through meditation, through those type of things. But one of my most recent coaches, which he is a very controversial character to say the least, but that is Wes Watson, who he's a tatted up guy. He spent 10 years in jail, and basically teaches people how to be coached online. He was my mentor this last year. And he definitely has his struggles. He definitely has his issues, which he's very open about, relationship problems, different things like that, but he has really helped me help a lot of people. So I have a lot of a lot of good feelings towards him because of that, because he has kind of opened up the door to using social media to help other people, where some of these other mentors that I had in my life, the yogis and the real peaceful people, they understood how to find peace within themselves, but they didn't understand the internet. They didn't understand how to connect with other people it through this social media world. So he was one of my most recent mentors that I think opened up my mind to that, and is really what kind of put me on the map in Instagram world, if you will.
Now that leads me to my next question because I just found this out recently. I didn't know you're doing life coaching in the prison system.
Yeah, I've been doing that
I
for
know I just really found that out. So what made you do that, and like how long have you been doing that?
so I've been doing that about 10 years. And since my 20s, like I think it was like my late 20s, I started doing that. It might even be longer, to be honest.
Right.
But what really drove me to that was when I was younger, I got in a lot of trouble, and things that I could have ended up in jail for a while,
Yeah.
just being in the wrong crowd, wrong time, wrong place, and stuff.
Okay.
And you see a lot of that in the prison system where people will just keep getting rotated in and out because once you get a charge, it's very easy to mess up when you're on probation and different things
Yeah.
like that. And
Mhm.
then I had a lot of friends in that world as well. So that ended up there and different things. And so, but I've been volunteering down at the Denver jail for quite a while. And we'll go down there typically like once a week and just talk to inmates. And I talk to all across the board, murderers, different people with like high cases to just the guy who got picked up last night for a DUI, so it ranges very, very high to low. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned in there by talking to these men is identity creates our reality. And what do I mean by that? Like a lot of times when you talk to these people, they think they're pieces of crap. They think they're worthless. They think that they have a lot of guilt. You think you're going to meet sociopaths in there, and I'm sure there are some, people like that. But generally, what you will meet is people with a ton of negative connotation to their own identity. They do not think they're good human beings. They have
Yeah.
a lot of guilt. They have a lot of regret. And when you feel like that, when you hate yourself, you keep setting yourself up for negative situations in the future. And what I try to do in there is I try to go in there and reveal to them the positive aspects of themselves,
Mhm.
which you would think you got to go in there and reveal all the negative aspects. You got to go in there and tell them you're an idiot and why are you doing this and blah, blah. And sometimes you do. But most of the time you're trying to reveal to them like, man, you got a good heart.
Yeah.
You got a purpose. You got something that you can do to change the world. And when they start identifying with that part of themselves, they start manifesting a better life forward. And so for me, again, it's I heal by healing other people. That's the biggest thing I've learned in my life. So when I'm dealing with guilt over my own decisions, or I'm dealing with regret or pain or just doing stupid things, it helps a lot to kind of help people through their own traumas, through their own guilt, through their own negative pain that they've created. And
Mhm.
then I can go back to myself and say, like, okay, I can work on this myself as well.
When you're talking to people in the prison systems, do
Mm-hmm.
you pick and choose? Because some of them guys, they're pretty big, man. Like,
Oh
you
yeah,
got
yeah,
all
yeah.
type of charges against them. Like, how do you like navigate through that, like, and not be like, okay, well, this guy's an asshole. He's a predator. He's
Yeah,
this and
yeah,
that. I
yeah.
mean, like, how do you separate that and still like be a life coach to like certain individuals?
A lot of it, and I've talked to people that most people wouldn't want to talk to. I've gone through because of course you are going to meet the chomos in there, right? You're going to meet the lowest of the low, and it's so funny because in the prison system you have a hierarchy, right? Like
Yeah,
on the outside world, we mostly like we'll look at, oh, okay, you're a felon, you've done this, whatever, and we kind of categorize everything the same. But in the prison system, you have higher felons, lower felons, and then you have like the child molesters at the bottom, right? Those are like the
yeah,
worst of the worst. And for me, what I do is I just take off the entire lens of categorizing people to the most degree I possibly can because at the end of the day, everybody that I meet, I want to help any way possible. And
okay,
the only way to look at these guys at that point is to just look at them as a piece of God, as a piece of creation, no matter what they've done in the past. Not to say that those things are right or that I condone those things by any means, but I still want to find that piece of God within them because if I can find that in them, they can see it within themselves. And I truly think that's how you rehabilitate some of these guys who are doing terrible things is to help them find the good within themselves because somebody who doesn't see good within themselves, guess what they're going to do? A bunch of negativity out in the outside world and they're going to continue on that path. So
to end on that subject there. How do you navigate when you tell people that I've gone to the prison system, I've helped, I'm listening to their stories, I'm trying to help them out as much as they can. Has anybody come to you with a negative person? How can you help this individual? like they actually
Yeah,
come at you, like really attack you for like, let's say like a molester or a rape or something like that.
sure,
How do you
sure.
handle that criticism?
I think honestly, like when I look at it as helping them, it's not necessarily going in there and saying what you did was okay. It's more trying to get them, again, future oriented to not live that life anymore. And
Gotcha.
so I think we all know that these people need help because they're going to continue to be a burden on society in one way or another. And our criminal system hasn't really done a great job of rehabilitating people. I mean, people will go in there as grade one criminals and come out grade 10 criminals because I'll learn so much stuff in there. So our systems aren't really built for rehabilitation. They're built to separate people from society. So I think when people realize that my intention in there is to help people live a better life and to not do harmful things, then they're okay with it, from that perspective. But I've never really had too much of the negativity around that, but I'm sure that exists. And I'm sure that's probably permeated through the world where they just look at these people and think they should just be, taken out or whatever it is. But I think we all have got stuff in our mind and in our subconscious and in our guilt complex where we've all had things that we've done that we know we shouldn't have done. And I don't like to place it on a hierarchy and say, well, this is this bad or this is this bad, because a lot of it is circumstantial. Like if I grew up in an area where I had to steal, kill, destroy in order to survive,
Yeah.
I would have probably done those things, right? Where I grew up in an area where I didn't have to do those things, but I was doing other things that weren't very good for me. So a lot of it is circumstantial. A lot of it is where the position they're at, and just trying to look at it as more of like, this is an example of ego at its worst. No matter how, whatever, not worried about the form, but more worried about the cause of it all and trying to get to that cause, which again, I think it breaks down to the guilt, the shame, the negative opinion of oneself. And when
Yeah.
you can break that, the external factors, the form that it takes will take care of itself.
All right. Joe, let's get into CBT practitioner.
Yeah.
What does the CBT stand for?
So that's cognitive behavioral therapy. Um, and so again, cognitions are just a simple word for thoughts.
That you got into earlier. Now, I read that there are four stages to this, which I'm still trying to understand. And I guess because I'm telling you, somebody's going to ask me, like, yeah, what is that? What is these four stages? What is a CP practitioner? I found out stage one is assessment and engagement.
Okay. Mhm.
Stage two is, because I'm not the best at pronouncing words, formulation.
Oh, yep. Hmm. Yep.
Okay. Stage three is active intervention.
Mhm.
And stage four is maintenance and relapse prevention. Can you break it down, like kind of
Yep.
combine it together so people
Yep.
understand this? 'Cause I can understand because I can't understand shit.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And with these things, I think it's important to just break them down as simply as possible, because from my perception, like truth is very apparent in life. Like if for example, if you believe in a higher power, right?
Yeah.
And it's like I have a son right now and everything. I'm gonna make the truth so apparent for him, so simple for him. I don't want to like hide it in the Da Vinci Code of life and say like this is the truth that will help you out, but you have to. I want you to, figure out this huge Da Vinci Code, and then you'll figure out the truth. No, I'm going to make it so simple, so apparent for
Yes.
him. And so with these different stages, I think they're really helpful to the practitioner itself. But to kind of break it down in a simplified manner, it's awareness over your thoughts, and then the idea that you can change your thoughts, and then actually doing that, and then not going back to your thoughts. So like for the last stage, relapse and those type of things, because sometimes people will change their thoughts for a little bit. Like they'll hear a podcast or they'll hear something positive and they're like, man, I'm going to start thinking about life like this. But then they go back into the same old way of thinking, victim mentality or whatever they want to go into. And that is just like a pattern. We've learned these patterns over a long period of time. So, but the biggest thing with those four stages is number one, just bringing awareness to the idea that our thoughts are creating our emotions. And then bringing awareness of what thoughts are creating the emotions right now that you're having. And a big question I like to ask people is if they're feeling a certain way. Say somebody's feeling a ton of guilt. Maybe they're feeling very anxious. Maybe they're feeling very sad. And you ask them, what do I have to believe right now in order to feel the way I do right now?
Mm-hmm.
And you'll ask them that. And so there's like, man, I just feel anxious, whatever. Okay, well, what do I have to believe in order to feel the way I do? Well, I guess I'd have to believe that not everything works out, in life, and maybe anything bad can happen any moment or something like that. And I was like, okay, well, is that what you believe? Well, not really. I think there's maybe a higher power guiding me, and maybe my life is here for a purpose, and maybe things happen for a reason and stuff like that. I was like, okay, well, now how do you feel? And they're like, well, I actually kind of feel good. So again, it's going back to your belief system, seeing what you're maybe not acknowledging in your own belief system, and then reassessing and then going from there. And
Oh,
so then if I see that person a week from now and they're feeling anxious again and sad again, I was like, well, what was that thought that helped you out last time? And they're like, oh yeah, I think everything happens for a reason. I'm here for a purpose, and maybe my life is destined, and these things that are coming in and coming out are bringing to a bigger plan, a bigger purpose, and then they start feeling good again. So it's
hmm.
just reassessing what people are believing, because if you have like a nihilistic point of view on life, which is just everything is meaningless, there's no point, there's no rhyme or reason, there's nothing above us taking care of us, kind of guiding us, helping us through our life journey, it's going to be very difficult to have peace in the world, because
Facts.
we're going to be in a place of desperation. We're going to be in a place of aloneness. We're going to be in a place of fear and worry and these type of things like that. So it's really figuring that out. But I'm very religious tolerant, in the sense that I'll help people with whatever religious context they are in to help find that with themselves. If people are coming from a completely different background than me, I don't care, but I'll try to find the deep truths within that background and help them relate to that, because it'll be like, oh, well, you say you're a Buddhist. Okay. Well, don't Buddhists believe X, Y, and Z? And then they'll be like, well, yeah, I guess that's true. And then they'll start thinking differently. Or you say you're a Christian. Well, don't you believe that, God takes care of you and God is guiding you in your life and he's got a plan and a purpose for your life? Yeah, I guess I do. Okay. Well, now how do you feel? So it's finding people to kind of align with their own belief system and hopefully work that out. But if there are some areas in people's lives that are very, disconnected in that world, it helps for them to kind of search within. That's why, they say like all of our problems stem from the fact that we can't sit alone in a room by ourselves for an hour.
Mm-hmm.
And so many
Mm-hmm.
people need to do that. Just sit alone, figure out, what do I believe? What do I believe about life? What do I believe about myself? And really take the time to assess that, because I can tell you to believe something all day long, but until you feel it within yourself, you're not going to really resonate with it.
Do you do any of these that you discuss? Like,
Mm-hmm.
how does this help you?
So, for an example, when my sister passed, right? Like, that's a perfect example of how cognitive behavioral therapy pretty much saved me from massive depression after that, right? So, my
Mm-hmm.
sister took her own life 10 years ago, and that was very traumatic for my family. She was a very good person and all. I mean, she had like 500 people at her funeral. She was not one of these people that was just terrible at life. Like, she was very good at life. She was very good with other people. She had a ton of friends, successful career, different things like that. But she did take her own life. And with that situation, I think she was going through a divorce. She was also on a ton of pharmaceutical drugs at that point in order to help with her depression, which theoretically she should have been the happiest person alive with all the stuff she was on, which, of course, not to downplay those things or say they don't work, but I am here to say that there are other options. There are gaps that we are missing in our mental health world if we're just purely doing pharmacology. But with that said, when she passed away, I remember there were so many people so devastated and so lost at that point, and
Yeah.
thinking, oh my gosh, what's the purpose of that? Well, I looked at it and said, okay, number one, I believe she's a spirit soul. I believe she's energy. I believe energy is never created nor destroyed. It's only transformed. And by the way, that's not even a belief system. That's reality. That's based on the laws of thermodynamics. So
Mm-hmm.
when people talk about the eternity of the soul, A lot of times people will be like, oh, well, that's woo woo, fairy, fairy, whatever. No, this is straight up science. Like, this is what our
Yeah, yeah, yeah,
science
yeah,
is
yeah.
built off of. And of course, I'm not here to say the soul does this and it does that. I'm here to say the energy that makes us up is eternal. It's always been, it will always be. Like, there's never a time when this energy has not existed, and there will never be a time in the future where it does not exist. Why? Because energy is never created nor destroyed. Just let your mind wrap around that for a second. But the form that energy takes is going to change, right? My form's going to change. I'm going to get younger, older, and then eventually I'll discard this body. But the
Yeah.
energy that actually is giving me life right now, that is animating my body right now, this energy is never created nor destroyed. So, number one, I looked at the situation and I was like, okay, well, I feel like she still exists. She's just not in a physical body right now. And there was a ton of lessons that she learned through this process of, taking her own life. A ton of lessons I learned through this process. Now, am I going to look at this and say, poor me, I lost my only sibling and I'm such a victim for the situation? Or am I going to look at this and say, what does this mean for me in my life and the people I can touch and the people I can help? Well,
Yeah.
then that gave me a purpose out of it. All this pain and suffering that I went through was no longer me being a victim. It was now I can turn that pain into purpose and help other people possibly not take that avenue in life, right? Or to change their life in a positive way. And so, again, that was my cognitions that actually helped my emotional state. Now, imagine if my cognitions at that point were, oh, she's my only sister, she's gone forever. And
Yeah.
oh, I'm never going to see her again. This is so terrible. And this is, life is just blah, blah, blah. And we will all go through some losing somebody we love, right? Like,
Yeah.
very few people will make it through this life without losing their parents, without losing a friend, without losing something. And if you think that, okay, well, they're gone forever and they're never going to exist again, and this person, it's a much different mindset than thinking, well, they're gone now, but I will see them again. I'm still connected with them because everything's connected. And there will be a point when I see them again in some other form or fashion. It won't be in the same physical form, but I will be connected with them because why? Because energy is never created nor destroyed. And that's a much different cognition than just looking at it from a purely materialistic standpoint. And so when people are going through the loss of a loved one, and I work with a lot of clients like that, for some reason, I have a lot of clients who have lost their mothers. And that they just seem to cling to me, which I still have my mother around. So that's a good thing. But for some reason, I have a lot of clients like that. And that's one of the things we'll talk about is like, well, what are your beliefs around that? Do you think you'll see them again? And a lot of times I'll say, yeah. And I was like, well, okay, let's dive into that. Let's feel comforted by that, knowing that, yes, they're not here right now, but eventually you will see them again. And one of the examples I like to give is like, say, somebody that you lost, they went to Brazil and they still exist. They're not here with you. You can't, speak to them physically because they're in a different place, say Brazil, somewhere far away. Well,
Yeah.
someday you're going to go to Brazil and see them again, and that's a much different mindset than thinking they're gone forever or that they don't exist anymore or whatever like that. Like, it's, if you can look at it in a different context, whatever spirituality that you prescribe to, it'll give you a lot more peace over the quote loss of a loved one. And so that was one of the ways in which I was able to heal through that situation and process it in a different way. And again, as we process things, our emotions around the situation are going to be different. Yes, I experienced grief. Yes, I experienced sadness, but I was in a state of hopeless grief, of hopeless sadness. And that's a much different place to be than a place to look at it from a larger context, if that makes sense.
Joe, I admire your faith. I admire, like, you have a lot of knowledge about this mental. I can tell you, for me, that's very difficult.
Yeah. Yeah.
After losing my daughter, and
Mm,
I told you respect and understand everything you're saying.
yeah.
Uh, I am not there yet.
Yeah.
It's gonna probably take me a lot more time for that one, but I think a lot of people would definitely understood what you just said, and probably it's gonna mean a lot to someone who listens to this. It's gonna take
Absolutely.
me a little bit more time.
Yeah.
When you
And
lose a child,
I can't
I
imagine.
can tell you, it's a hole that cannot be repaired.
I believe that. I
It
believe that.
cannot be repaired. But
Yeah.
let's get
Yeah.
on. Let's talk to another subject. I I was looking up some stuff,
Mhm.
and you co-wrote a book.
Yeah. Yeah.
Let me get this right. The storyteller An Orphan's Journey to Enlighten and Freedom, which, ladies and gentlemen, is available on Amazon right now. So, I mean, go out and cop that book, and we would definitely put that on. So, what inspired you to co-wrote this book, and what is it about?
So yeah, this is I co-wrote it with one of my good friends, and he has one of the best personalities. He's one of these guys that when I first met him, I'm like, okay, this guy's either on drugs or he's gonna have a nervous breakdown because he was so happy all the time. I'm like, I'm just waiting for the other shoe to drop. You know, when you
Yeah,
meet somebody that's so positive and you're like, okay, this guy's obviously like he's on something, right? But I've known him for years and years, and 10 years went by and he's still the same person. And eventually we started talking back and forth because I've got a pretty decent psychology, but his psychology was very, it, it set up the game for him to feel good. And our psychology in our life, we want to set it up so we feel good. For example, like our rules, our standards about what life should be is what will make us feel good about life or not, right? For
yeah,
example, like my coach, Wes Watson, who's a multi millionaire, he was talking about how, when he has more money, he drives a $2 million Bugatti, he's got a yacht and stuff. He's like,
damn.
yeah, I mean, he's crushing it. But he was talking about how we think money's going to make us happy. And he's like, man, I'm so pissed today. He's like, my life is horrendous right now. He's like, that you're gonna be looking at that dude and be like, that motherfucker just slammed in the back of my yacht. I'm so pissed off. And he
I'll
was
be
making
pissed
the
off too.
yeah, but and he's talking about, so he set up this world where most of us would be like, hell yeah, I got a yacht, because that's a different standard we have.
Yeah,
Where
yeah.
in his mind, he's pissed because somebody scratched his yacht. And he was making the point that we think external things are going to make us happy, but in reality, it's our psychology. So anyway, this guy's got a really good psychology, and I was asking him one day, I was like, well, what makes you think the way you do? And he told me, he goes, I think we are all living life, we're telling a different story about life, and dependent on the narration of that story is dependent on how we will feel about life. And so he goes, I just choose to write a happy story about what I'm experiencing, whatever I'm experiencing. And I'm like, oh my God, that's exactly what cognitive behavioral therapy is. And so the premise of the book is there's an orphan and he's trying to figure out his story. So, when you're orphan like that, you don't know your family is, you don't know, anything about that. So you're
Yeah.
trying to figure out who you are, what you are to this world. Well, he meets one guy who tells him that, oh, it's so sad that you're an orphan and that this is so sad you don't even have a family, and really tells him a negative story about himself. And so, guess what? His life starts reflecting that. He starts looking out in the world, everything starts looking darker. It starts looking more depressing. He feels all alone. He feels like everything's against him. And a lot of that is because he accepted this guy's story about his life. And that's the point of the story, too, is also to remember what stories were told about you and your life. And a lot of times when we look at what we can achieve in the world, and for you, like with this podcast and different things, I'm sure somebody told you someday that you can do something great, you can touch a lot of people's lives, and that stuck with you, and now you're like, hey, I'm going to create a podcast around that. And I was watching a Kanye's documentary, and his mom, she used to tell him all the time, you can do anything you want, you can create anything you want. And when you're brainwashed like that as a young age, you're going to end up doing a ton of stuff. But in the story itself, the orphan is now telling himself, oh, I'm an orphan, I'm so sad, blah blah blah. Well, he's going through life very depressed at this point, and then he meets a man who tells him, no, you are the storyteller, you get to choose. And when he gets that power, he starts realizing he gets to tell the story of, is being an orphan a negative or a positive? And he starts going, well, maybe it's a positive because I can become whoever I want. And now I have a ton of family. I don't just have one family, I have a lot of family. And I look at all the people I've helped in my life and all the other orphans that I can help out. And now I'm like a father figure to these people, right? As opposed to just thinking this one little thing. So it opens up his whole mind to now realize that he can be like a father figure to all the other orphans and help these other people. So he changes his whole story about it. And then eventually his whole psychology changes, his whole world changes. And again, the premise of that book is to bring it back to us and say, what story are we telling about our life? And is that story empowering us? Is that story bringing in more love? Is that story bringing more peace? Or is that story bringing less? And we have the power to choose that story. And nobody else has that power, not God, not your parents, not society. The story that you tell about your own life is 100% up to you.
Joe, that's deep as shit. God damn, bro. Like I told you, it's unscripted.
Yeah, I
Yo,
love it.
that
I
was
love
the
it.
deepest thing I've heard in a long time. Yeah,
Okay.
ladies and gentlemen, you have to get this book. I'm going out and get this damn thing. That was deep, man. Very well explained. Joe, I thank you for coming on, my man. Like,
Sure.
this has been very, very enlightening. But before we go, I got 5 questions for you.
Yes, sir.
Okay. I want you to think about this. Okay. Question number 1. What's 3 words that best describe you now?
I would say free thinking, um, centered, and purpose driven.
That's that. Joe. You on a roll today, bro.
And a lot of that, I mean, that can almost sound somewhat like cocky in a sense, but
No.
because I can say negative things about myself as well right now, but I know if I affirm those things within myself, I'm going to manifest that, so I'm very careful about what I say about myself, because the mind doesn't know the difference between a joke and a serious thing. So sometimes I'll say, oh, I'm stuck at this or whatever, but it's like, no, I have to bring myself back to a truth, and then I'll start living that, so.
Joe, let me tell you something. I'm a little bit older than you. Whatever you feel, you own that shit. Don't let
Hell yeah, bro.
nobody take it away from you.
Hell
Nobody.
yeah.
You own
Hell
it.
yeah.
Own it.
Love it.
All right.
Love it.
What was the most humbling moment in your life so far?
Gosh, humbling moment. I would say probably again going back to relationships, because I can be, and of course I'm in a long-term one now. I've been married for 10 years and stuff. And so, but I know getting in the dating world, like that can throw you off. Like it's
Hell
it's
yeah.
yeah, it's rough. I talk to a lot of my single friends, and so many people are single nowadays, up until whatever, and it's just kind of the world we're in now. But I know those were some of the most emotionally humbling things, because you can't control another person, and it's very difficult to emotionally attach yourself to somebody else and then realize that you don't have control over the other person, so that's been very humbling for me.
Wow. Whose advice do you value the most?
If it was, I would say, I have a pretty good family and stuff, and I've learned a lot from them. But it's one of those things that your family can only take you so far, right? And thankfully, we have the internet, and we have so many great teachers and mentors out there. And I have taken these people on their advice on, a huge way, because it's like my family can take me to one step, but these guys are way, above and beyond that. So I think out of all the mentors I've had, I think Tony's the GOAT. Tony Robbins is the GOAT, man. He just breaks it down so simple. And no matter what state of mind I'm in, I can listen to Tony and feel better.
I love it. If you could learn one skill instantly, what would that be?
I think to be able to read other people in a very effective way, have really good empathy with other people, and sense what they sense, feel what they feel, because people will say so many things, but what's really going on beneath the surface is a totally different story sometimes. Some people are like, yeah, I'm doing great, I'm feeling fine, or this was awesome, I'm totally into it. And then in their mind, they're like, yeah, whatever, right? So to be able to actually look past what people are saying, look past the smiles, look past the whatever, and really get deep and figure out what this person is actually feeling. I think that would be a really cool skill, and just to increase my empathy to such a degree that I could put myself in other people's shoes in a very high level.
I love it, brother. Last one. If you had a theme song to best describe you, what would that theme song be?
Man, uh, dude, that's a good one. I'm trying to think of something that really pumps me up at the gym, dude. I don't know. God,
I know what mine is.
what? Let me hear yours. Let me hear yours.
Me Against the World by Man Tupac.
Oh, I love that, dude. I love that. Yeah, that is you got to go back to Pac, man. Anytime I'm in a low point and I listen to him, dude, I will just crush out my workout. And again, we were talking about this the last time. Like some people will look at that type of music and say, "Oh, well, that's negative, or that's this, or that's that," and they don't understand. I'm like, these people came from some of the worst past, some of the hardest
Hell yeah.
lives, and they created something absolutely amazing out of that. And so to me, that's what's so inspiring. And so I love like the worst of the worst rap, man, like the hardest of the hard. I'm out there listening to it when I'm getting my pump on at the gym. And it's because again, these guys came from a really deep struggle, and now they have actually become something. They've created something out of themselves. So uh, I don't know. I'd have to think about that one, man. But there's a ton. There's a ton.
Joe, I want you to give your final message about to someone who might need a life coach, mental health. What you know, mental health is such a big thing now.
Yeah,
Because
man.
you and I talked before, like back in my day, it was about sucking it up.
Yeah, yeah,
Now
yeah.
it's totally different now.
Mhm.
You know, because people need it. And I
Yeah,
must people need to talk to someone. And I tell
yeah,
people all the time, talk to someone. But
yeah,
also that person has to be available.
yeah,
Because
yeah,
I've heard that many times that they reach out, oh man, and then they're not available.
yeah.
Give me a send off for everything you're doing now. Give a message out to people today about that.
So number one, you can always reach me through the DMs on Instagram. I respond back to everybody. Sometimes not in a super timely fashion, but I will respond back to you. And it's Mental Health Fitness Dad on Instagram. And the other thing I would say is that it can improve. It can get better. And the weird thing about it is like with our bodies, we know they can get better, right? We see people transform. They lose hundreds of pounds. They transform, but the thing is mental health can also transform, mental health can also improve. But the problem is when we are in a negative mental state, we are seeing the world through that negative mental state. So it's very hard to realize that we can improve our mental health when we're in a dark place. But I'm a
Yes.
testimony of somebody who has overcome his own personal struggles, and there are so many other people that I've worked with and seen and have just been around who have improved their mental health. So if you are in a dark place right now and you feel like it's not going to get better, you're thinking about taking your own life or whatever it is, or you just feel like life's not going to get better, let me tell you, it can absolutely get better.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it. Joe, thank you so much for taking your time out today. And I know it's Saturday, and I know you got this. You probably gonna do something with your family. Thank you for watching the show. Please like, subscribe, comment. Stay tuned next week for another exciting episode on Let's Talk About It.